Crowhill here. Today we review a stout and ask, what do liberal churches have to offer? Good evening. Hey, Pigweed, good to see you.
Hello.
Right.
Good evening. And how about some beer and conversation?
I think that's a great idea. What are we drinking?
This is a stout.
Okay.
Yes.
That looks like a short pour, but all right.
We'll
talk about that. Yeah, okay. So,
but what's on your mind?
Well, I was thinking about what would happen if you were to take a Jehovah's Witness and cross a Jehovah's Witness with a Unitarian Universalist.
All right. Is there, do I need a drum roll here?
Yeah, maybe.
Punchline?
Yeah. You get somebody who goes around knocking on doors for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
well, let's. This looks like you gave me a short pour on this beer. What's going on?
I didn't mean to. What is this? Somebody get this? Chesterton brought this skinny little bottle out.
Yeah.
When I ordered from Ireland,
Jamaica. No, it's Jamaica. It's a Jamaican stout. Maybe it's normal in Jamaica to have 9.6 ounce beers.
When I saw it at first, I'm like, oh, it's
That's
one
an
of those.
11.2, but it's even smaller than that.
Yeah. Even that.
All right. So, well, okay.
At any rate.
Let's see if we get anything
okay.
good out of these 9 ounces.
So this is 7.5%.
Mm-hmm.
That's a respectable stout.
Yeah. Actually, it's got an interesting flavor. I'm not getting as much roastiness as I would expect from a stout. But it's got a nice flavor to it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It has its own flavor. That's a unique.
It is unique.
Stout.
Yeah. It almost,
really
it almost
cool,
has
it's sweet on the back end.
Yeah, it almost has a molassesy sort of flavor, which kind of fits with it coming from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Right?
They might fortify get some of their fermentables from molasses, They make rum and such.
Yeah. Actually, that's pretty interesting.
And,
pretty interesting.
Remember we talked in the Ireland show. We talked about Guinness,
yeah,
and what a huge seller it is in Africa.
Uh-huh.
So so they're no strangers to stouts.
Yeah,
I mean, stouts are not limited to.
No, it's not like only Europeans drink stouts. Yeah, so actually, pretty interesting, guys.
Sweet.
So next time you make a new beer, buy some tickets. We'll come down and try it. So thanks very much.
Righty then.
All right,
we're talking about churches, church, and denominations, and what's going on. What have you noticed any trends in the last 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot of wokeism going on in churches.
Yeah.
There's a lot of churches that they dove right into Black Lives Matter. They dove right into rainbow flags.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean now there was a. I don't know what denomination was a church in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the drag pastor.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
why would you bring your children to something like that?
Yeah. Are they testing the way that the winds are blowing, and they're not really concerned about the actual teaching? They just want butts in the seats, and they think, this is the cool direction that things are going. So this will help bring people in.
Yeah.
Or are there nefarious forces that are putting pressure on these churches?
So this just occurred to me. What if we could frame it this way? That most people go to church because they want to be connected with some idea that's bigger than themselves. They want to be connected with some sort of a vision for culture, for the way to live life.
No, that's a very good approach. Yeah. Let's talk about why you go to church anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go to church because you want to be around people who are going to support you, who are going to encourage you in a particular social direction, so that you will be what? So that's the question. So that you will be what? So traditional Christianity, the idea would be so that you would be a good disciple of Jesus, right? I mean, that's the basic idea. Liberal Christianity seems to take that idea of being a disciple of Jesus as being like uber-tolerant. That's the most important virtue, is being open and tolerant.
But aren't churches supposed to be judgy?
Well, that's an interesting question because, traditionally, yes, a church would preach sin.
Stop doing that.
Yes, they would have the 10 Commandments on the wall. They would say these are things you're not supposed to do. Churches are supposed to preach sin. I remember one time, I was a trumpet player in high school, and I got hired by this Baptist church to go play in their worship service on Easter morning.
Right.
And at the time, I was an atheist, and I thought, okay, fine, they'll pay me some money. This is great.
It's a gig. Baptist, you say?
Yeah, Baptist. And it was a hellfire and brimstone Southern Baptist church. And man, the guy was laying it in on these people. And I had to hide my face because I was laughing because it was so comical. I'd never been to such a church. Where somebody was doing all the acrobatics and yelling and screaming and all this stuff. And that was
banging on the Bible.
Oh yeah, it was the whole show. But that was what some people would expect out of church, is to hear a message of sin and condemnation and redemption. That's kind of what it's about.
Get your act together.
Yeah, you think of
You're
John the Baptist.
You're not living the way Jesus wants you to live.
Right.
Daggone it.
Right.
Act right.
Yes. So, and traditionally, that attitude would be, stop fornicating, stop harming, stop robbing your neighbor, or stop. But the
carousing and boozing and
but the liberal church seems to have changed that into stop judging people. Right? Now, I mean, with a little thin amount of biblical justification for that. Jesus said, don't judge lest you be judged. But the idea in the liberal church seems to be that the ultimate virtue is to be forgiving and accepting and allow anybody to say or do anything.
Right. Well,
unless they're conservative.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But there's accepting, there's forgiveness when you are repentant.
Yeah.
Which is different than just saying, I accept you forgiven as you are. I forgive you before you even sin, and whatever you do is, don't worry about it.
Yeah, so there's a difference between, just plain, I forgive you everything. There's this saying, I'm probably not going to get it quite right, but it's something like, I love you the way you are, but I love you too much to leave you the way you are.
Oh, okay.
So if somebody... if your child is doing something wrong, you still love them, right, but you want them to be better. Yeah. You want to correct them. You want them to get straight. So I have kind of a list of things that, in my opinion, characterize liberal churches. And the first question is, by what authority do they speak? Because they don't really believe the Bible.
Right.
So by what authority do they stand up there and say, you wicked sinner, because you don't like boys turning into girls, or, whatever kind of nonsense they say in liberal churches? What is the authority that lies behind that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure they could find select passages that say, go ahead. I've got some examples.
You got something? Okay, good. And then another key characteristic of liberal churches is they betray basic Christian doctrines, such as the virgin birth and the deity of Christ and that kind of stuff. They don't think those things are very important. I saw an article about this pastor who was like, oh, I'm not sure if Jesus rose from the dead, and it doesn't really matter. Right. So that's a common characteristic of liberal churches. They tend to think of man as good rather than sinful and in need of a savior, except they don't think that conservatives are good, so they're a little mixed up about that. There's a huge compromise on sexual ethics, although, to tell you the truth, I mean, in the liberal church, same-sex marriage is okay, LGBTlmnop is okay, gender fluidity is okay. But to tell you the truth, in conservative churches...
Right.
There are very few conservative churches that are willing to stand up to people who are living together when they shouldn't be and that kind of stuff. Almost nobody holds up a biblical standard on any of those topics nowadays.
Or saving yourself for marriage. How's that?
Exactly.
How limited, that's...
Yeah. The liberal church, generally speaking, they're universalists. They believe everybody's going to heaven. Denial of the resurrection and Christ's miracles. Social justice is more important than the gospel. So, I mean, that's kind of a broad picture of what these woke churches look like.
So, what are you getting out of?
Yeah.
How about the Babylon Bee headline here?
Church that believes exactly what the world believes. Not sure why no one bothers coming to church anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. If you can get it from Oprah, then why are you going to church?
Yeah. If you're going to church to be affirmed that Jesus loves you just the way you are and don't worry about it, Yeah.
And Jesus might not have existed anyway, but he still loves you. Yeah.
Right. This hypothetical Jesus.
Right.
And the consequences don't really matter because you're going to heaven anyway.
Right.
But, and whatever you're doing is fine. Is that what you're going to church for?
Yeah, well, I don't understand what the point of that is. I don't understand why do you need to have this great big mushy marshmallow hug, that doesn't affirm anything really. And there really there's no moral distinction between what they're saying and what you can get from
some self-help book.
Right, some self-help book or from the DNC or, it's hard to understand why you would bother with such a thing.
Well, so I hear that traditional Orthodox churches are gaining popularity, particularly with men.
Yes, and that's very interesting. Apparently, it used to be that women went to church way more than men,
right?
Substantially way more than men. It's changing. Now, especially in conservative churches, more men are going to church and women are not.
Right.
So there's an interesting...
Right. But those that are going there who are married, I'm sure, are taking their spouses and they're going, look, we want something that's got some
substance.
Some sense of history and some sense of tradition, and that I'm really part of something. It's not just a rainbow colored youth group,
a weird social club. Yeah. So the liberal churches don't really have much to offer except for this kind of generic liberal hectoring that's not anchored in anything.
So I came across this series of their like handout cards kind of a thing.
Okay.
And so where would you rank the United Methodist Church in the the range of wokeness?
Yeah, so Methodists are weird because individual parishes can be different, but generally speaking, United Methodist is on the woke side.
Right. So this is so the little catchphrase here is living faith, seeking justice, pursuing peace.
Okay.
Now, it's on various topics.
Yeah.
They have, what does the Bible say? And then what is the Methodist Church position?
Okay.
So you can can't you just always, here, what does the Bible say about climate justice?
And zero.
Well, what?
Well,
God
actually,
saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good.
Well, does
that mean I support EV vehicles?
Yeah. So obviously there is a message about taking care of the planet in Genesis, where Adam and Eve were made to tend the garden, and the idea that you're supposed to have stewardship over the planet. So there is this idea that man is supposed to tend and care for the planet, not destroy it. So okay, there's some biblical stuff there, but you're right. It doesn't translate into therefore we should have wind farms.
So here, immigration. So you could just in the Bible, it was important for you to be kind to travelers, people passing through who are So really, you're just going to grab something out of Leviticus, and then therefore open borders.
Right.
So the whole thing. So criminal justice reform, indigenous peoples, occupied Palestine. Okay, here's right. So I'm sure that the Jews weren't crazy about being occupied by the Romans, or whatever else. So I'm sure you could get some quotes out of here. You go Isaiah or Jeremiah, and then say, well, then they don't say anything. They say, what does the Methodist Church say about occupied Palestine? Well, there is no occupied Palestine. They pulled out of there. I don't know how dated this thing is. They've probably just been reprinting the same thing for 40 years. To call for an end to the Israeli occupation, we affirm the Church's commitment to nonviolent responses. No. So all of these are universal health care, food justice, HIV and AIDS. When did churches, run? This is 8, and there are a lot more than this.
Okay.
Take a stance on issues like that.
Here's the funny thing, that generally speaking, churches are supposed to not preach politics from the pulpit, because part of the agreement has been churches are not taxed, and they're supposed to be an independent voice, but they're not supposed to engage in politicking. They're not supposed to be preaching politics. But it's been a complete double standard. The liberal churches have been preaching politics forever, and the conservative churches have not been. And this is the same kind of thing. So you have, and generally speaking, my reaction to these kind of things is somebody starts with a very superficial understanding of what Scripture says and then runs with some crazy policy. Like, for example, I had a neighbor who was telling me that in the book of Acts, it preaches communism because everybody held everything together, and they were okay. It's a complete misrepresentation of the passage. Here you had people from all over the world gathered in one place. They were sort of on vacation. They came there for a special feast, and people voluntarily, not a government stealing from them, they voluntarily gave up their goods to feed these people, and they shared things together. That's not communism. That's.
But when communism was trying to get a foothold in Central and South America,
they pretended
that liberation theology.
And the stupid Jesuits came out and
the Jesuits were in that.
Oh, Jesuits were big on liberation theology. The Jesuits started off as like the Pope's Marines.
Yes,
they were the tough guys in the Roman Catholic Church.
The theological hardliners.
Yeah, they've become worse than useless. And by the way, Pope Francis is a Jesuit.
Well. Speaking of Pope Francis, do you mind if I bring up a little Pope Francis?
No,
here?
if you want to pick on that guy, it's fine with me.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and I'm sorry that he's not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has pneumonia.
As I told Mrs. Crowhill the other way, I wish him well. I hope he gets better and resigns.
Yes, he's like, I can't do this anymore. Now, is there? I guess in the inner circle there might be the Pope in waiting, or do you not? Or is there not?
No, they don't know.
They keep it really.
As far as I know,
right.
You wait until the Curia, the College of Cardinals, gets together, and then they elect somebody,
and
you never know who it's going to be.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, yeah. So it's not like I knew it was going to be. So Pope Francis issued a major rebuke Tuesday to the Trump administration's mass deportation of immigrants, warning that the program to forcefully deport people purely because of their illegal status deprives them of their inherent dignity and, what does this mean? Quote, will end badly. Are you threatening somebody?
The Vatican has very, very strict policies on people who go into the Vatican without authorization. They have serious fines.
Have you seen the wall around the Vatican?
Exactly.
It's very impressive.
Yeah. If Pope Francis wants to take all the immigrants into Vatican City, that's fine. We'll fly him over there. You can take all of them.
And what was the other? How about the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, since we're on there, sues Trump over immigration funding. So my question is this, we've talked about this before, this sort of misuse of Christian terms.
Yeah.
Like, charity means, you give people all your money or whatever. So is this mercy and compassion and charity, or is the church going, we need Catholic Mexicans to fill the pews because we're losing homegrown?
Well, that's an interesting question. So the Catholic Church in America has traditionally been on the side of immigrants because when there was a big problem with like Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants coming in, and they weren't treated particularly well, and the Catholic Church was pro-union and pro-immigrant because those were their people. The Irish and the Catholics were the Irish and the Italians were the Catholics. Mm-hmm. So the church has had that bias, which is why the Catholic Church in America has traditionally been democratic, because it's been pro-union and pro-worker, right? So those things kind of all go together.
Good.
So to some extent, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops promoting this idea of being helpful to immigration kind of ties in with all that. But there's a kind of a difference in kind here. Or it's at a certain point, something becomes so different from the other thing that you say, we're not really talking about the same thing here.
Right.
The number of Irish who were coming over who were not getting free cell phones and free stays in hotels,
and they were invited in, and they were processed through Ellis Island,
and then it was like, go make a living, and and you're on your own, and they had to find a job, they had to work, okay,
and
but
the situation was there to help those new immigrants down on their luck. And
the problem now is you can't get into an emergency room because there's 25 illegal immigrants in the emergency room ahead of you, and the public schools are overwhelmed because of all the illegal immigrants.
Right.
We have hotels that are full up, that the the government is paying to house these people. They're giving it's absolutely insane. It's a completely different situation. So
the spirit is consistent with the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
but
the implementation. Come on. This is very different.
Look at this situation.
Yeah, obviously, you want to have mercy on somebody who's on have a bad situation and they need help. You should help them. Yes, but there's got to be limits. That doesn't mean that you have to allow 10 million people to come trounce on your country. So, yeah. But one of the things that I think is a huge differentiator between liberal churches and conservative churches is I've never met someone whose life was transformed and changed because of what they heard at a liberal church. I've met hundreds of people whose life has been transformed and changed by what they heard at a conservative church.
What do you know?
I mean, there's nothing there. There's nothing that there's nothing that grabs a person and changes them and makes their life better. It's just this pablum.
Yeah, right. 'Cause if you're just affirming the life that you have, and you're not being compelled by Jesus to change your ways.
I feel so good because I'm hearing in church the same crap I read on Facebook. It's like, what good is that? Yeah. Now,
so go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that I find very interesting is a lot of Jews are very pro-Christian. And this is a growing thing. I mean, obviously there's been bad blood between Jews and Christians in a lot of ways. But Dennis Prager is very pro-Christian. And he says that Christianity has never been replaced by anything that was an improvement. Like, he's very concerned about the health of the Christian church. Because whenever Dennis Prager is. And whenever Christianity is replaced by something, whether that's communism, secularism, Nazism, Islam, whatever it is, it's always worse.
Yeah,
I thought that was a pretty good point.
Yeah.
And now between liberal woke Christianity and conservative biblical Christianity, which of the two is going to stand up against communism, secularism, Nazism, Islam?
Yeah, I mean, Europe needs a resurgence in Christianity because not only does secular liberalism not have the stones, it's totally facilitating its own demise. Yeah, and they know it. It's just so obvious that the orchestrated takeover by Islam of Europe is all right. This is the playbook, kids. We're going to take advantage of their tolerance. We're going to take advantage of democracy, and then once we have the numbers and the power, then we're just going to do what we want. Yeah, and then these squirmish. What am I trying to say?
Squeamish.
Yes, squeamish, wishy-washy. Yeah. Liberals are going to be say, look how tolerant I am. Yeah. Yes, until you're a second-class citizen.
You're so tolerant until they haul you away and hang you. Yeah. Or chop your head off or whatever those guys do.
So I've got this. This is from what is this here? This is the Baptist News Global. Okay. And we have to introduce Bishop Booty. Is that how you pronounce it? Bud?
I don't know. The one at the prayer breakfast?
Yeah, because I want to talk about this because whoever vetted this bishop, I don't think they have a job.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah.
I mean, Trump and Vance are like, look, I can't do everything. I got to put other people in charge of
somebody
other
else
things.
has to check on these things for me.
Whoever checked this off had to know what was coming,
and
you are not on our team. So.
Now, fortunately, they handled it exceptionally well. They sat there politely while the woman lectured them, and then they left and said, it wasn't the greatest. And that's basically all. Trump was very.
Now, I think she's lost her job since then, but I don't know.
Well, I think she's not in charge of the cathedral anymore.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and that her she's in charge of the Episcopal Migration Ministry.
Okay.
which received $53 million
Right.
of taxpayer-funded, this is the LG, government NGO
Right.
money, to resettle 3,600 individuals.
Isn't it
if I
funny?
hold on, let me run the math for you.
Yeah.
$14,000.
For each person.
But you could have sent them on a 6-month cruise.
Yeah, or built them a tiny house.
Yeah, right. No, took 4 of them, built a very nice house, but no, that's how much it costs with administrative costs.
Well, you've seen these tiny house things that they sell on Amazon.
I know.
They're
not bad.
not bad, and they're like $20,000. So you find some place and you build this thing. But
so I guess it goes back to the previous question of are they following a woke version, their woke version of Christian principles, or are they kind of being undermined by money and woke secular
yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to parse that. Megan Basham, who works with Daily Wire, wrote this book called Shepherds for Sale: How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. Now, this wouldn't apply to somebody in the Episcopal Church because they're not evangelical leaders, but she's making a case that people like George Soros and some other guys have been intentionally funding various kinds of left-wing stuff in evangelical churches to try to undermine the influence of evangelical churches because...
It's not a bad move.
No,
I mean, if I'm an evil genius, then that's what I'm doing.
Because from a political perspective, if you're on the left and you're trying to promote, democratic politics, the evangelicals are in your way. So trying to compromise them and get them on your side, it's a smart move. But according to her book, that's happening. Now, that from this perspective, from the Episcopals are weird because there aren't very many Episcopals in America. It's a relatively small denomination, but they have oversized influence because a lot of very wealthy people are Episcopals and a lot of very powerful people are Episcopals. So they end up having more influence than they ought to just from their numbers. And they have been very liberal for a very long time. And there are only there are some conservative Episcopal parishes. Some of them have actually gone into the Catholic Church, the conservative ones. But generally speaking, Episcopal churches are very liberal. So they just kind of follow the Democratic line. Hook, line, and sinker.
So hold on. So I was trying.
Yeah, the Baptist thing.
Back to the Baptist guy. So he's saying a month later is what this opinion piece is after the Moody incident.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you have her. So her name, she says, this guy's like, well, the bishop was not wrong. She just cut the list too short. So how about these few questions that he has?
Okay.
Did you really intend to ally the United States with Vladimir Putin and Russia against our democratic allies? Do you want us to become the drunk uncle of the free world? I mean, is this like serious? Is this a serious religious people talk? All right. So that's nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really intend to fire the workforce that handles our nuclear arsenal? No. I'm sure that's not at all true.
I don't think.
Do
Trump
you really
would
intend to fire FAA air traffic controllers when there's already a shortage and planes are falling out of the sky? I mean, it's like a crazy. I can't imagine it's coming from the Baptist community. This just sounds like your standard coming from the View.
It's coming
really?
from. It sounds
the
like
View.
It sounds like the standard crazy nonsense I see on Facebook. Now, unfortunately, I'm back on Facebook. I've been off Facebook for like I don't know how many years, 10 years or something. But I got back on Facebook for particular reasons. But what I've seen is I think a lot of these people are in danger of having a heart attack because they are so crazy, hair on fire, upset every single day. I'm thinking, for heaven's sakes, could you please take a break and just like relax for a little while?
All right, can I bring up my quote of the week?
Okay.
At this point, so Musk trying to explain to Hannity what it's like to talk to a liberal about Trump.
Yes.
And this is he's like he's at a dinner party or something.
Right. Yeah.
He just brings up Trump's name. He says, It's like talking to someone who has been shot with a dart in the jugular that contained methamphetamines and rabies. So, I mean, he's perfectly willing to just have a polite conversation.
Yeah.
But you run into meth and rabies.
Yeah. And that's what happens. Because the people that I see on Facebook, this is the only place where I don't even engage with them. I just see what they're saying.
Right.
And it is... Here's the thing. The reason I got off Facebook many years ago was because I would try to engage with people and have conversations. Yeah. And they would get derailed and things would go crazy. I just don't even try to engage anymore. Yeah. I just look at it and laugh because I see all this crazy hair on fire nonsense. And by the way, from both sides. I mean, there's some crazy hair on fire nonsense coming from conservatives as well. But
when you see the conservative man on the street trying to interview somebody at a liberal protest.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not a single person makes a cogent argument.
No.
It is completely...
It's
derangement
absolutely crazy stuff. And when you ask them...
It's just name-calling and crazy eyes.
Yeah. So when they go and they find somebody who's protesting, what are you protesting? They don't even know what they're protesting.
Right.
They don't even know what the issue is.
Right. It's hate, it's violence, and it's... You're an SOB for asking that question.
Right. And unfortunately, that mindless attitude is infecting the liberal church to a huge degree. And again, getting back to our topic, that's what's going on in a lot of liberal churches is they're just kind of affirming people in their craziness and giving them some sort of a thin veneer of religiousness to wrap around it.
Right. So you are. So I went to a memorial service.
Yeah.
And the father, the deceased, I was with the deceased daughter.
Yeah.
And she grew up in that church, but it's been a long time since she's been there.
Yeah.
So that was the church she grew up in, and it was Black Lives Matter on the lawn and rainbow flags draped all around, female pastor.
Right.
And she's like, this is the church I grew up in, but I wasn't this church.
Yeah.
So my question is, so let's just say she had continued on in that church. At some point, would you just go, this isn't the church I remember? And are people dropping off, or are they picking up new people due to their inclusiveness?
Well, the liberal churches are rotting and dying on the vine. The membership is declining substantially. I mean, generally speaking, in America, membership in church is on the decline.
Yes.
All over. But the churches that are growing are the conservative churches. The liberal churches are declining substantially. So no, it's not. They're not picking up new people. People are saying, I don't see any reason to go here. It's just stupid, and they don't go anymore.
What conservative church did we go to, or traditional church did we go to?
The one in Baltimore?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a church that had been a Anglican parish, and they came into the Roman Catholic Church. So the priest was actually a married guy because he was a priest in the Anglican Church, and then when he came in, stayed a priest in the Roman Catholic Church.
They don't make you dump your wife.
No, yeah. So that is a very conservative Anglican Rite Catholic Church, and the liturgy is very long, but it's very traditional. Right. And he's a good preacher.
Is that the kind of church that is gaining popularity?
The Orthodox churches are growing. Eastern Orthodox, like Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, that sort of, those churches are growing. Conservative Presbyterian churches are growing. Conservative evangelical churches are growing to some extent. And there is a movement towards, like in the Catholic Church, some of the churches used to do the Latin Mass. Those churches were growing. A lot of younger people are attracted to the Latin Mass. Now, idiot Pope Francis has been trying to get rid of the Latin Mass and is not allowing people to say the Latin Mass because he's an idiot. Well,
come on, I mean, what if it's every third Sunday? What's wrong? Right?
Yeah. I don't know. He's just Lutheran Satire. Lutheran Satire has a channel on YouTube, and they had him pegged years ago. There's this video. If you haven't seen it, look up Frank the Hippie Pope. by Lutheran Satire on YouTube. It's really good. It's very funny. All right, so here's the bottom line to me. If people want to have these crazy ideas and do their nutty things, that's their business. But Western civilization is under attack, and we need people who have some sort of moral courage to defend Western civilization. Is liberal Christianity going to defend Western civilization?
Oh my gosh, what a bunch of limp noodles.
Yeah, absolutely not. They're useless. And that's what we need now. We need a revitalization of a belief. We need King Alfred, who fought against the Danes, who believed in Christian civilization and said, no, I'm going to stand up for this because this is what's right and this is what's going to be good for the future.
We'll see. I mean, that's what it's going to take for Europe, and hopefully, I'm seeing signs of it, but I'm just getting little Twitter glimpses. Who knows?
I know.
Who knows what's real?
It's too hard to know what's actually happening.
Anyway, so that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
You don't need rainbows in your churches.
Yeah, don't go to a church where they don't believe anything.
I was in Indianapolis and had the whole sign that said "We believe in science" and the whole thing. Although it had one that I hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. Feminism is for everyone. I hadn't seen that one on the list.
Feminism is for people who want to be miserable.
Yeah, and that's teasing a future show.
Yes. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.